thank you so much for coming. I was so excited to tell everyone on this mastermind retreat that we had with Jack Canfield of Chicken Soup for the Soul about how to get all the stuff done that we were all talking about doing. And people are overwhelmed. You're trying to do it by yourself, and there's just no way you can. That is the same for anyone doing anything in particular. I have been saying I have 2 virtual assistants, and I don't know why I don't consider the third one a virtual assistant, but one works for my core business, Entire Productions, and the other 2 work on my personal brand course, the community, and the mastermind. I have had a company for the last 20 years and mostly hired full-time W-2 employees. I had $1 million payroll, which was really challenging when it came to having to lay people off and just having that kind of overhead in a downturn. It will do lots of things, keep you from getting where you want to go, keep you from getting the goals that you want done, keep you from being able to see your friends and family and do fun things. There's a solution. It's so amazing, especially right now. So I wanted to talk about what a virtual assistant is, and I'll probably use the term VA, which is what most people will refer to that because it's a long thing to say, as you can imagine, over and over again. So a virtual assistant is generally an independent worker who assists you and your team with administrative, business development, social media marketing, other tasks, many other tasks. And we into all the tasks that my virtual assistants do for me, but also the tasks that they're able to do and where to find them, how much they cost. I want to answer all the questions so you absolutely know how to source one and know that it actually is absolutely worth it, and it can be very inexpensive. It's mind-blowing. Virtual assistants can be US-based, they can be right there in your city. The part about the virtual assistant that is different than an administrative assistant or the traditional assistant is that they are not coming to your office, they're not coming to your home. Maybe they'll come for something special, but in general, they're working from their own place. They're also paid either directly through an organization or through a hiring company, and they're responsible for their own taxes, or the intermediary company is responsible for that. So they're not a W-2, they're either a 1099 or you're paying for a service. So the big question for all of you is, what can they do? What can they take off of your plate? As I go through the list, I'll explain in a little more detail if my VA does this for me. One thing you can do is have them manage your calendar. If you're a very busy person, and if you're like me and have 3 different calendars, you can have a virtual assistant manage that. I will say I manage my own calendar. I use Calendly, and it really helps me. I do give my VAs access to my calendar, and when I ask them to put that up on my calendar for me, then they do that. So they're not really screening all of my inquiries. One of the great things about VAs in calendar sharing is if you have a string of events over the course of some sort of time, and you don't want to go in and go put in 8 different events, you can just send the list to them. I take a screenshot and I say, hey, can you put these in my calendar? They can answer your email, which I know is a little bit of a tricky thing. Again, I don't have my VAs answering my emails, but a lot of successful entrepreneurs I know don't read their own email. They only read the emails that their virtual assistant have sent to them as, you need to read this. Otherwise, they're responding. They can respond as that person if it's not a personal connection, or they can respond as the virtual assistant. By the way, as I'm talking and you have questions, you can put them in the chat. I'm going to run through this, and then we can do Q&A at the end. Contact management. So a lot of us have lists that we're building to try to get the word out about our services or our products, and putting them in the internet service provider, whether you're using Kajabi or ConvertKit or MailChimp. You need to be able to store those and tag them appropriately, and your VA can do that. You can just forward anything you want. You can forward them a list. You can forward them a screenshot of something that you've written down. You can let them know what tags to put on them so that you are communicating with them in the future via email for the thing that they really want. So for me, not everyone that I want to communicate about my book wants to hear about my entrepreneurial course, or they may not want to know about entire productions. So I have them segmented out. And if that's not something that you are doing or aware of, that's a whole nother webinar. The next thing is receptionist duties. You can use an app called Grasshopper, for instance, and they can be the receptionist for your team. My VA has a Grasshopper extension for entire productions. And she is also the recipient and monitoring. If you go to entireproductions.com, immediately at the bottom right, there's going to be a bot that comes up. And when you start engaging with that bot, instead of it just doing automated things, my VA is responding to those inquiries. Now, when they come in and she is not necessarily the person to take care of it, she then puts that request into Slack or emails the person she knows can take care of it directly. So our clients are really getting met where they're at. So some will call, some will email, some will come through our web. One of the things that my VAs do a lot of is transcription. So transcription of my podcasts, of like this entire presentation is being recorded. Then my VA is going to run it through. We use Descript.com, and I'm going to send you a link for that. And it, through artificial intelligence, it does a very good job of transcribing what is being said, about 95%. It depends on how good your mic is, but that is amazing. And Descript also does video editing without your needing to be a video editor. And even if your VA doesn't have the skills already to do this, it's very easy to. You can turn these things into blogs, newsletters, social media posts. When I say you, I actually mean your VA, because my VAs do all of my social media for me. Do travel research and planning. They can book flights and hotels for you. I have my VAs do the research for me and then actually do the booking. They can do lead generation, so scraping the internet for data if you give them parameters and putting it into a CRM or a worksheet. Sorry, we're already past that. So we're on the tasks now. My VAs, specifically the two that I have that are in the Philippines, have great graphic design skills. Now, not all of them will. And with the invent of canva.com, almost anybody can do basic graphic design. We'll talk a little bit more about the different skills and by region, which is interesting to think about. Pre and post production for podcasting, that is a heavy lift. So the only thing I do right now with my podcast is I invite people that I want to be on it or respond to people that want to be on it and record the interview. My virtual assistant, as soon as someone gets invited, they do all the pre-work. So they're putting all of the information about that person in a folder on Google Docs with their bio. So when I'm ready to interview this person, I have their bio. I put in my questions just to prompt me. And they're doing all the organization. They're getting them up on my website. They're getting their headshot, their links. I am not doing any of that work. And then I do the podcast. I have another, you could say VA, but actually he's a producer in Turkey that is producing, editing and making sure wonderful, all the pieces of the music and the intros together for this beautiful podcast. It sounds amazing. And then post is once he sends back the final, then my VA is taking that and putting it into splicing out audiograms for us to put on the internet to promote it. They are doing a blog post, they're transcribing it. So much stuff is happening in the background. So I'm really amplifying anything that I do with the podcast. And Even if you don't have a podcast, I hope that you see the wheels spinning, whatever project that you have. So some people spend hours and hours or thousands of dollars a month producing their podcast. And I've got it down to I'm spending about $100 per podcast for the pre and the post and the editing and amplifying it in so many ways. And that's a very small number. And I'll explain to you how that happens and what they can do. Blog writing, newsletter, and copywriting. If their English is really good, this is really helpful. If it's not so good, they can still do it, but you just need a good editor. Also, we're toying around with Jarvis.ai and not quite sure yet if it's for us. We're testing it for about 2 months to see. We don't allow it to write all the content for us, but we let it give us like a head start. They can run KPI, so key performance indicators, reports. They can create any report that you tell them how to do and give them the right tools to do. They can screen applications for employment. So as they come in, you can give them a set parameters of what you're looking for and what you're not looking for, and they can give you the ones that they thought would be the best. Now, you may miss out on some good ones, but you've got to really let go and trust in order to scale and grow whatever your operation is. And bookkeeping. Now, my VAs don't do this. I am using a company in India where my books for my multi-million-dollar company are done by someone in India that is managed by a US CPA. And I just have to tell you, in the past, I was paying $50 to $75 an hour and bonuses and benefits and payroll taxes. And I am now paying $20 an hour, which is amazing. And the person doing the work paid a very good live. They can schedule appointments. They can do personal things for you. You have to let them know in advance that you're and let them decide if that's something that they want to do. They can take notes on calls, webinars, etc. Right now I'm recording and I can transcribe, so I don't really need someone taking notes, but sometimes I do have them do that. For instance, if I'm running a room on Clubhouse, they can manage your Dropbox, your Google Drive, wherever you put your stuff. They can organize it for you, make sure things are named correctly, and that you're just all in the right space. Especially if you're super creative, you're going to need someone to help manage. And then social media. This is such a big one. So almost all of my social media, except for the stories where you see me talking, is done by my virtual assistants. And they are coming up with my specific 2 VAs from the Philippines are giving me ideas. They're doing the graphic design. They're really helping me scale and grow. So they're not just doing what I tell them to do. I've given them permission to give me options and ideas. And how do you create for them? Now, I know this is a little chicken egg. We will get to how do you find them, how do you source and qualify them. But a friend of mine could not understand how in the world she could use a virtual assistant. She's, I wouldn't even know what they could do. And so I decided I had to remember what it's like to be before I ever had one and explain to her this. So if you already have your processes in a system down somewhere on a piece of paper, on a Google Doc, on a Word doc, or if you have videos, then you're like way ahead of the game. If you don't, which many of you won't have, you can do very similar to what I'm doing now. So I'm telling you how I use a VA, and the VA on the other side of the Zoom, potentially, we're going to be recording it, and it'll be their responsibility to transcribe it and then create a scope of work or standard operating procedure on a document for you so that they can refer back to it. But also in the future, when you need to swap out VAs or if there's some sort of change, you don't have to start over. Roadmap. You don't have to do anything except for explain what you want done. It's really helpful to explain how you want it done or what to use. But if you don't know, that's fine. Ask them. They probably have a lot of things that they can share with you. So that's about it. I think making that manual for them. And then how do you source and qualify a VA? This is where it's the Wild West. I'm going to tell you about how I sourced and qualified my own VAs and a couple of other sources that you can look at that I know of personally, but may not have used. So I'm also going to send to you all a sheet with resources. So you don't have to write anything down. You can click the URL. I used Pineapple Staffing. They are located in, I think, Arizona in the United States, but all of their VAs are in the Philippines. And what you need to do is just write a list, like a brain dump. I need someone to do this. And it doesn't have to be perfect or pretty. And then you type it into an email, and you can be pretty vague. You can say, I need help with social media. What does that mean? That means graphic design, posting, scheduling, content calendar. They can prompt you the service for what you really want. So you explain to them what you want. Do you want them part-time? Do you know how much you want them? Do you want them full-time? Do you want them every day? Do you want them and need them to work on your time zone, or can they work in their own time zone? At first, I wanted my VA to work in my time zone, but then I felt so guilty for having them work in the middle of the night. I think it's unhealthy. I can't imagine myself doing it. I wouldn't want my daughter to do it. But as it turns out, some of these VAs in the Philippines really like that. Whatever reason, they might be working jobs, they might have a spouse or a partner that's working that time as well. But my VAs work on their own time. They get up a little bit earlier so that I can talk to them in the evening. And we work a lot on email. What they do then is take what you've said you needed and the hours that you need, and they will give you 1 to 3 options, depending on what you're asking for. And Pineapple Staffing specifically gives you this really folder where there's a video of the VA saying who they are and how interested they are working with you, their resume, some of their work in the past, references, and you can either interview them. But do you know what I do? And I have this for a long time and have hired a lot of people. I make a great guess at who I think would be the best, and I just have them start. Because the best way to know if somebody's going to work out is have them actually do the thing. And if they don't work out, you can just make a change. Mine have all worked out so far. The other VA that I have for my core business, I found on Upwork. She lives in Los Angeles, and so I pay her through Upwork. So I have 2 companies that I'm paying. They're taking care of all of the payroll, the taxes, everything that they need to do. So it's completely legit. Let me just check here and make sure I am figuring this all out. Oh, it takes anywhere from a day to a couple of weeks for this company to find the right VA for you. Now, VAs right now are really a hot commodity. So these companies are going out and trying to find people to bring into their realm. So sometimes it takes a little while. And some companies' screening is more intense than the others. Pineapple Staffing, I'm not sure how intense their screening is, but they've been really good at giving me all the information I need to make a decision. The other company that is an entrepreneurs organization, which I belong to, owned company, which I haven't used yet, but I'm getting to how much it costs. I'm saving that for the end. How much does it cost? This is the amazing thing. There are ranges, of course. So in the Philippines, you might be paying anywhere from $5 to $11 an hour. I came to the knowledge of about $4 an hour is a good living wage. Others say anywhere from $1.50 to $4 an hour, depending on where they're living in that region, is acceptable and good. It's hard to understand because we're here and things are so much more expensive. If you're VA in the United States, depending on when they live, I remember, I think at one point had a VA through Upwork that lived in Georgia. And I think the minimum wage there was like $7.50 or $8.50 at the time. I don't know what it's now. And I was paying this person $15 an hour. And he was just blowing my mind. So right now, the VA I have that's working for my core business, and she does all the admin work for all of my salespeople and some admin for me. I pay her $15 anywhere from their local minimum wage to about $60 an hour. And I know that's a big spread, but once you get up to that $40 to $60 an hour, you're working with people with an incredible amount of experience. They may have some skills that the other VAs don't have, maybe in corporate work and such. And I know I looked into this company called Belay. It's Belay. They're on the more expensive side. I think at least $40 an hour. And the next thing I wanted to talk about outside of cost is time zone, which we mentioned before. Again, they can work on your time zone, but you have to let them know in advance so that they can choose yes to do that. Now, Brad Stevens, that owns Outsource Access, has, I think, 400 plus VAs, actually probably more than that. And he uses VAs for his own company. One of them is now his chief of staff. And I think he's never even met this person in person. He's gone to the Philippines a couple of times, but some of them work on American US hours and some of them never do. And so you get a 24-hour workforce if you go about it that way. That was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but I want to get to your questions. Does anyone have a question?
First, thanks, Natasha. It's amazing when you offered to share all of this incredible knowledge. I was quite taken back by that. It was pretty amazing. Generous heart you have. I appreciate that, giving back. That's what it's all about. And yeah, so I guess, yeah, you just dumped a massive amount of incredibly valuable information on us. Thank you. Yeah, it's just amazing. And no wonder you're doing so well. Both your spirit and your intellect is pretty strong. Are you trusting, like when you talked about some things, I got a few like Privacy Act things jumped out, a few identity theft flags, radar. I know there's VAs have been very prolific in certain industries for a while in the Philippines, and they're getting really good. And you go as far as to trust with quite a bit. Are you giving them, it sounds like you've put a firewall between your actual, like your banking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So no payment. They don't have access to any of your credit cards, any of your banking stuff.
Yes.
Or do you have, or maybe a dedicated credit card just with a low limit, or some way to firewall that piece? How do you
my VAs don't have my credit card information or my bank information. My accountant in India does, but in corporate banking, there are a lot of things that you can say, she can do this, she can't do this, she can do this, she can't do this. I also have a layer of having a controller and a CFO that oversees her. I have that added layer of benefit. You can do passwords specifically for role. And I do actually recommend that you set up an email for them that is generic, so that if they leave or they change roles, you can have at whatever your URL is.
Yeah.
And there are password. So I use 1Password, and I don't think this works, but one of my VAs said there is a company that admins, and I'm not sure what that is. I just said, oh, I don't use that. So
okay.
I'm pretty trusting, and I'm from the Midwest. I don't know.
But you also have a super high techie skill level, and you're able to differentiate probably and determine where a risk may or may not be. But like the other thing was just having them answer, because I'm up in Canada. I don't know, we're different in it. So I heard a bunch of things, especially your tax language is totally different. It's for alien what you're talking about, but that's okay. We have the same stuff. We have payroll and everything. But in getting them to email for you, and you were saying like some people, like certain CEOs will they'll actually impersonate them. That's you got to be careful with that too. As to
so my canned emails from me and my voice, if somebody's responding canned email or is simple information, they might say, hey, this is Talia for Natasha, but still answering from my email.
If you were just starting out, Natasha, out of Any place in your business model, where would you first use a virtual assistant? If you can go back all that way.
Yeah. If I could go back all the way to the beginning of time, which I was not able to delegate because, of course, my ego said it had to be me. It does not have to be me. That is ridiculous.
That's everybody, Natasha.
I know. I would begin doing the system and processes exercise with them because most of you do so much in your day-to-day lives and your work that you have in your head. If it's in your head, somebody else can't do it. If it's written down, somebody else can. And that is, even if you don't want a virtual assistant, it should be written down because if something happens to you, people need access to that information to keep going. So I think that would be my number one, very first thing. I would say I would start with anything that is repeatable, lower touch, doesn't have to have your sparkle on it, things you don't like to do, things you have to do on a repeated basis. So all of those things, because I'm really also big on automation. We won't even go there right now, but get all of that out of your way and out of your head. And then can you imagine what you could accomplish?
I have a theme I hear from some photographer friends, and I guess really it's for so many people. It doesn't just need to be photographers, but I just hear it from them, is that the fun part is just being out in the field. And then it's the part when they come back to the office. And even though it's enjoyable for them, it's still taking time away from being in the field. Mm-hmm. And I had this couple that I know where Klaus would be out taking photos, and then his wife Rika would take care of it, the post processing, the orders and things like that. And I thought, wow, he's got a good system going. And it sounds kind of like with your VA, it's wow, you have got a phenomenal system going there. It's just really quite something to attempt to wrap my head around how all that works. I can see how it works, the benefits, but it's like Michelle was asking, just where to begin.
What I said about beginning will give you a good foundation, and then you can just layer. Once you start understanding their ability and how much you're paying versus how much value you're getting and how much freedom you're getting, you're going to get a little addicted. I just told you I have 3 virtual assistants, and what am I doing? I'm going to be looking for another one. So I'm creating my own little mini army of amplification of everything that I need to be doing.
I was kind of interested in the hourly wage and just thinking about, how all that works, because there are some things that I'd like to learn how to do with my website. And one of those reasons is because anytime I'm asking my web guy for help, they're close to, well, we're Canadian dollars, but it was close to $100 an hour. And,
so do you have a WordPress?
And I'm not getting the returns of my products, right, or my services right now for that, because that's the one thing I'm building.
Yeah. Are you using a WordPress?
Yes.
Okay. So I can connect you with somebody who's going to be doing my WordPress, I think for $35 an hour. And I think they're from the Ukraine. So I have people that I was spending $150 to $175 an hour building my website, official natashamiller.com. And I'm glad that I got what I got done. But now as I add to it or change it, I'm using this other person. However, I will say the person that I'm using built my friend Josh Kopel's website, which is Josh Kopel, KOPEL.com. You can see, it might be Joshua, but I think it's Josh. He had her do the whole thing. So I ended up spending $10,000 and he ended up spending $2,000.
Whoa.
Yes.
Yeah, and for someone that understands the e-commerce part of it or the marketing, like I'm finding that they were a great help to build the site. But now I feel like I'm needing to come up with kind of the marketing ideas myself, and I'm just bumbling my way along.
So I know that the VAs at Pineapple and Outsource have some of those skills, but I think for you, Upwork might be a great place to source people and look at countries where the dollar is much stronger than theirs. It's not like we're gouging them or we're not paying them what they're worth. It's just that their living expenses and their monetary currency is weaker than ours, and they have incredible skills.
And so to understand you correctly, then it's you hire, if you will, the VAs through a source company, so to speak, and then you are paying the company who pays whoever works for you.
Correct. And for Pineapple specifically, I get an email every day from my VA. Actually, one has stopped doing it because she understands I don't need to see it, but they're doing screen captures of their work for us and exactly, what they're doing to prove their
Wow.
work with you. There are apps that do that. Upwork also has their own, where it just randomly, if you're logged in at Upwork and you're working on my job, it will randomly take screen grabs of your work. So to make sure that they're working on your project when you're getting billed. Some VAs, if you find them on Craigslist or whatever, you might have to pay directly. And then that would be a 1099 employee. And you have to make sure that there's that balance of legal interaction with your business.
And thank you. Yeah, just thank
Yeah.
you.